an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Trickster Drift by Eden Robinson. Chapters 35 through 40. Weird-ass chats with rabid dogs, the rupture, day 1, the angry bitch that lives inside us all, the end is nigh, and someday. In these chapters, this is the weirdest ending I've ever read, ever in my life. Guys, I was listening to the audiobook while I was at the gym, and I'm really glad that I was there alone, because I went very late and there was not another soul. Because I kept stopping and being like, what the fuck? Out loud, despite myself. Because it is just so bananas. What is the third book written already? If it's not written already, I'm going to have a heart attack. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks to Robin for commissioning this episode and for commissioning this entire book and the entire book before this. I am so hopeful. I feel like I remember, Robin, you saying that the third book was not yet written. And if that is so, I am going to die. This ending is bullshit. And I don't mean that in terms of like, I hated it at all. It's just the worst possible place for it to end. Like, it's mean-spirited for it to end there. It feels like she really, like, fucking cackled over her typewriter. For some reason, I picture her writing this on a typewriter. And just being like, take that, suckers, as she yanks the final page out of her friggin'... And I am so mad. Like, I was still listening to it when I got home from the gym. And Owen was sort of watching me because I had pressed pause to try and explain some of what was happening. And he sort of interrupted and said, you sound like you're just describing a weird fever dream. Like, I'm not following any of this. And I was like, that's fine. I'm barely following it. So let's back it up a little bit here. Chapter 35 is immediately like... I jumped into this next chapter almost as soon as I was done recording for the day on Friday, I think, and just could not wait to find out what happened. Like, this is one of the few books that I have felt like that about, that I've been covering for Spoil Me, that I'm just like, I need to know what the fuck happens, because it is such a slow build to Jared figuring out that he has abilities, to him actually like embracing that at all. And one could argue that by the end, he still really hasn't. You know, he's embraced things to the degree that he has to in order to protect the people that he cares about. But in terms of him really like embracing it for the sake of it, or because he is curious about it in his own way, that's certainly not what's going on. So I was just so eager to get to that. And we start off this chapter. She woke him up early Monday morning, vibrating. She tugged his hand to sit him up, and he went to throw on his shorts. As he walked past the living room, Jared could hear someone banging. So it turns out that Olive's ex is fucking pounding on the door, and he's like sweating and kind of too bright-eyed, which makes him think that maybe he's on something. And later on, Maeve says something about how the guy, you don't fuck with him when he's high. To which Jared, not trying to fucking flex at all, says, I've dealt with worse. And Maeve gets sort of a weird look on her face and looks like she might cry. And, Maeve, if you had seen what that meant when he says, I've dealt with worse, you would cry. Because it was so bad, and some of it was his own mother. Some of it, most of it, frankly, was his own mother. Like, oh my God. That whole thing with her eyebrows and eyelashes, how like she yanked him out. Ugh, guys, I can't. But anyway, Jared like films this guy and he tries to get the dude to sort of back off by being like, well, you're being filmed here, dude. So this, would be in your best interest for you to back off. But this dude is too high to really put together what would be in his best interest in any way. He accuses Jared first of being a pedophile and that is why Jared is hanging around Eliza, which is really low and really shitty. And whenever somebody gets like this, I have to say, I immediately suspect them. Maybe not of being a pedophile, but about maybe thinking about it. Maybe he hasn't done it, but when somebody's mind leaps to something this outrageous, that's just, like, and that's their immediate go-to, like, oh, really? What are you, a pedophile? Methinks you protest too much. Methinks you are putting this on somebody else in order to detract attention from yourself. And the dude comes at Jared as he backs inside his house and slams the door shut. And the dude punches on it. And he tries to pound on it a couple other times before eventually he just hears the dude leave and sends the video to Olive's phone. And when Hank later comes and talks to him, at first he says something like, you did good and gave us good evidence. And Jared's like, yeah, but, like I can hear that there's a but coming. And he says, just film next time. Don't engage. Jared said he was trying to break down her door. Hank was instantly pissed. I said don't engage. Jared tries to just get up and extricate himself from this situation. Like, he's trying to do the smart thing and just be like, all right, dude, you know what? Bye. I know this is going to go bad, that we're just going to yell at each other. Let's just fucking end this here. Well, Hank grabs him and says, did you hear me? He's unstable. You don't have your kind of weird-ass chats with rabid dogs. You call security, you call 911, you come get me. Is that clear? And Jared just sort of gives a joke answer, and he like sort of shakes him. And Jared tells him that he's dislocating his arm. And finally, Maeve has to step in and be like, Henrykins? This is serious, Hank said. I want you to take this seriously. I know. No more chit-chat with the roidy ex. You don't handle this on your own. He's a giant asshole, but he's slow. He's a starving bear, and you're a squirrel. Does that make you the moose? Moose and Squirrel, the cartoon. Yup, Maeve said, handing him coffee and a hard-boiled egg. Making friends and influencing people, that's you. Girl, Maeve, shut up. Honestly, Maeve, I really like Maeve. But when it comes to Hank, she really needs to fucking get on his case a little bit more. Like, Jared is under no obligation to play nice with somebody who has not played nice with him from the instant they met. And Hank is the fucking adult. Okay? Like, I just really have no patience for the expectation that Jared should somehow, like, bend over backward to make nice to somebody who, like, the things that Hank gets irritated about are pure ego shit. The fact that Jared doesn't seem to, like, listen to him the way that he should. Why the fuck should he? Who are you? You're nobody. You're not his father. You're not even, like, direct family. You're just somebody who lives in the building who's friends with his aunt. There is nothing, no authority there. Like, and the expectation of it. And the anger when he doesn't get something that he feels he's entitled to, that he is not entitled to, by the way. He just thinks he is super duper gross. And I have no sympathy for this guy. That's the one, like, and this may be petty of me. Call me petty. I was more bummed out by the fact that Hank doesn't get any sort of comeuppance by the end of this book than anything. Because I want him to finally see how shitty he has been. I want him to not only realize that he's, like, been rude, like, unspeakably, horribly rude to Jared from the instant they met, but also that he has accused Jared of being really selfish when Jared's, like, the opposite of that. And I want him to see how completely out of his depth he is, because he seems to think that he says something about, you don't have your weird ass conversations. Like, he's sort of accusing Jared of being a weirdo in general. I guess because he has seen Jared talking to things that aren't there. Like, I'm not even sure what he means by that, but whatever the case, I would fucking love it if he was in the middle of saying that and Jared just turned into a fucking raven right in front of him. I'd be cool with it, because you know what? I just want him to realize that he doesn't know everything, and that maybe he should shut the fuck up. That maybe he isn't just the protector man. Like, it just seems like that's what his whole identity is wrapped around. And because of that, anything that threatens that at all, he has this completely out of proportion response to, because he's threatened. You know, like, it's just, Hank makes me so angry, and this whole scene made me so angry. And it made me so angry that Maeve doesn't do anything except say Henrykins in a warning tone. Girl, he has grabbed your nephew and is shaking him and yelling at him. And you're not going to do anything but say him, like, his name in a little baby voice. Get the fuck out of here. Ugh. Disgusted. Okay. Olive and Eliza came to visit. Olive shyly thanked him, shoulders hunched, obviously embarrassed. Shue popped into the room, sizzling sparks. She stuck close to Eliza. Jared heard a hum like power lines on a hot day, but no one else seemed to hear it, so he said nothing. Eliza handed him a quarter and asked him to get as many marshmallows as it would buy. For Shue, she explained. So, Shue really, really wants to curse Aiden. She wants him to die, and she wants Jared's help doing it. And Jared isn't willing to do this, understandably. Like, this is the sort of thing that does really lead to a bad path. I completely understand the temptation. I really do. There are so many bad people in the world. Or at the very least, decent people most of the time who are ultimately capable of doing really terrible things. And what is so tough about that for me is that it's so common that we don't even deal with most of those moments. Like, the only things that we as a culture, in terms of, like, actually going out and handling it, are interested in are crimes that cross a certain other line. But if somebody is just at home beating on his wife, unless he really fucking hurts her, and unless she is willing to, like, you know, testify against him, 10 to 1, nothing is happening to that guy. Men who stalk women, the way that David has been stalking Jared, for example. Jared, his situation is a really good example. David was torturing Jared and has been accused of domestic violence before, and yet this motherfucker's out here walking around. He's fucking fine. Mostly because he's white. And because the retribution of his mother, of Jared's mother, like, nail gunning him to the floor, was considered a little over the top by people. Now, this guy was breaking the ribs of a child with an erection pressing through his pants. This is who he is. But nail gunning him to the floor is a bridge too fucking far. When you live in a world where that is the case, where a woman who is pregnant gets in a fight and gets shot in the belly, and she is about to be charged for manslaughter in the death of her child. When you live in a world where you can be caught in the act of raping, you can film yourself raping a girl and say that you are raping her in the video, and the judge argues that you're from a good family and you don't need to take any prison time for that. When you are living in that world, the urge to take justice into your own hands is overwhelming. It is the kind of thing that it is really a testament to our ultimate trust in a just system, if not of government, at least in a sort of like nebulous spiritual way. That we all seem to hope eventually people are going to get what we think they deserve. Eventually. It will happen. It may take a while and we may be unhappy in the meantime, but we'll get there. I don't know if I had Jared's ability and there was a dude coming to his house high after ripping his family apart, after taking their possessions and selling them for drugs, which is essentially what happened. I wake up in the middle of the night to him pounding on their door, high as a kite, trying to start fights. Guys, I don't know. I don't know if I would have had this kind of restraint. I respect that Jared doesn't want to do that. And maybe in the moment, I might have done something regrettable. I like to think that with the distance that he has of going back to bed, waking up, and then talking to Shu, and then there's this space between what he experienced and saw and being asked to literally kill the guy. I think that might make the difference. Like, for me, my temper is really the thing. I get so angry, and that hangs on. For some people, their temper builds up to this fiery fever pitch and flares out. That is not what it is like for me. I get hot in this sudden way that is almost overwhelming, and then it sinks down into my bones and is cold. Like, it frightens me sometimes what I think I could be capable of if I were in a position with power and that kind of rage together. I do not like it. It worries me. And I can't think of anybody with a more justifiable rage than Jared. So the fact that he is able to pull back and be like, I'm not doing that, Shu. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't know that I'm ever going to be okay with doing that. But she gets really mad and she decides that she is going to do something herself. And it's so awful because what winds up happening, as we find out later, is this guy gets in a fucking car accident and they have to talk to his family about being organ donors for him. And they had almost been free of him. But Shu, in her attempt to kill him, has managed to bind them together yet again. It's a kind of a background event by the time we get to it, because there's so much other bonkers shit happening. But it's a really good illustration of how much something can backfire. You want this person completely out of your life, and in trying to make that happen, draw them even further into your life in a way that you cannot be unlinked again. And that's not to say that his wife and child are going to be forced to give up an organ for this guy. That's not how that works. But I wouldn't be surprised if his wife felt obligated to do it. There's, when you have the power to help somebody and you don't, and you know that that could kill them, there's no way to really like look at that as any other way than you killed them, right? I feel like I would be really, if I were put on the spot to be an organ donor to somebody that I was family to, but didn't know well or didn't care about anymore and wanted out of my life, that would be the worst decision. To try and decide between, do I want to help this person that I don't think is really worthy of it and that may try to hurt me? Or do I just want to let them die, which is what would happen? Ugh, I really feel for these two. But anyway, yeah, so Shu just decides that she's going to do her own thing. And she's very irritated with the fact that he won't help. He checked the mail on his way out to buy some eggs. He recognized Granny Nita's carefully sloped cursive immediately. I'm happy you are safe. I'm so proud of you. Here is some coffee money. I'll write to you again if you like. Love, Granny Anita. Which I thought was really sweet. He's like kind of a little bit freaked out by people reaching out to him at this point. But yeah, he's, having a moment of just like, oh, okay. And he's thinking about this, and he's running late, and he goes down a side street, and as soon as he said he went down an alley, I was like, fuck. And this is when David comes up on him, and he is beating the shit out of Jared with a fucking pipe. And in the middle of getting beaten, Jared is just like, this guy can't kill me out here in the middle of the day. This isn't allowed. Like, he just keeps having these moments of just, no. No, it's like, I'm supposed to be safe right now. I'm in public. It's daytime. This isn't supposed to happen. Because he just doesn't realize how fucking cracked David is. And how safe David feels. Which you would. If you have done what David has done, and you've managed to get away with it and walk free as a bird every time, what fear could you possibly have of the system? None, right? You are going to get away with it. And if you don't get away with it, your punishment is at least going to be a joke. It's not going to be anything remotely like what it should be. So this whole thing is so hard to read because what David decides to do is so deeply fucked up psychologically. He shoves a funnel in Jared's mouth and pours vodka into it. And while Jared vomits a lot of it up, it still gets into his system. And Jared still counts this as breaking his year of sobriety, which technically it has, but I also can't count it against him when he was forced, literally beaten into doing this. Like, if I were Jared, I don't think I would have counted back to a year or back to day one. I don't think I could have. It wouldn't feel fair, but he's taking it very literally. Enough of this got into his system that he got drunk and he wasn't sober. And so you broke your streak, even though whether it was voluntary or not, it happened. And then David decides that he is going to pour the rest of this all over this kid and strike a match. And this whole thing comes down to this one moment. His phone was going to burn. His first good phone, the closest thing he'd ever had to new. The slow arc of the match. David danced back, eyes meeting Jared's, and he would plead for his life. He would beg for it. But the match was already flying, and he was soaked with alcohol. Scrambling, he jumped back enough so the match missed, but it hit the puddle of booze that Jared had left behind. The sudden flare of heat and the whoosh of combustibles realizing their potential. I don't want to burn, Jared thought. The fire trailed him like a wedding train as he hopped back. He heard his own panicked scream. I want to live, he thought. And he leapt, losing his clothes in an instant. He shed the ground. He startled the pigeon into flight when he landed on the fire escape beside it, his vision suddenly strange, with colors he didn't recognize, the world acid-high and tense. His arms were unwieldy, weighted with blue-black feathers. He flapped, confused, and realized his feet were claws, and he needed to grip the iron grating, but he couldn't figure out how, and he tumbled, croaking and flapping. By the time he hit the alley floor, he was human again. David stared at him with wonder even as he reached into the box of safety matches and pulled out another one, moving close. I'm human, Jared thought. That didn't happen because I'm human. He stumbled and tried to rise, and he was naked. David ran at him, a shrinking, furious figure. Jared bolted skywards, his wings knowing what to do with the lazy breeze, even as his brain scrambled to deny that he was flying. When he caught an updraft, he swooped. The ground was still there, but the air embraced him, and he was overwhelmed by the kaleidoscope sky, its swirling shades of blue like the waves of an ocean, greenish where the air chilled, and orange-tinged near the buildings where it was warmer. The sky above him was wide, beautiful, and free. So that's pretty awesome. I was walking to the gym at this point and stopped dead and was just like, oh shit. Because of everything that I expected Jared to be able to do, straight up turning into a raven was not one of them. It should have been, but I just really expected, I don't know what. I just figured that he was going to have, like, you know, enough. I don't know why. I thought that he would have enough distance to not have shape-shifting abilities like this. And that if he did have shifting abilities, it would be, like, not exactly the same animal as his father. You know? I don't know why. But this was just so unexpected. So we go to chapter 36, The Rupture, where we learn about the Cascadian subduction zone and the rupture of the plates of the planet, and the fact that every about 600 years there are these huge shifts, and the intensity of these earthquakes that happen compared to, like, you know, bombs, TNT, and whatnot. Eyewitness accounts tell us that late on a dark winter's night many years ago, Thunderbird fought a whale that had become a monster, killing other whales. As Thunderbird pulled the whale out of the ocean, the water receded, and then, when he dropped the whale, the water came flooding back, flinging canoes into the trees. When they fought on land, it shook with the epic battle. So that's a pretty cool idea, that this, you know, it's this fight that's causing this. The elders warned the people to run into the mountains. Those who heeded them were chased by a wall of waves. After a few days, the salt water sank back into the ocean. The survivors returned to their villages to find them scrubbed from existence. The shore had dropped 6 feet in an instant, long stretches of coast vanishing into the ocean. Stands of cedars and firs near the shore died as salt water drowned their roots. The resulting ghost forests can still be seen on beaches in Washington and Oregon, dead stumps and gray skeletons emerging from the sand. The ghost forests witness this new age and these new people who don't understand what a Thunderbird can do. So then chapter 37. He flies home and he can't believe when he gets, like, transforms back into himself, that he is, like, healing really, really quickly. His nose, which had definitely been broken, is fine. There's not even blood there. His lips aren't split. His skull, I mean, he got bashed twice, maybe 3 times with this friggin' pipe. And that's fine. Like, he doesn't have the pain that he had. It says he touched his sides. He reeked and still felt hosed, and he wondered if he could change that. And then he became afraid that he could, and of everything that meant. He picked up a throw blanket and wrapped it around his waist. It meant nothing. He couldn't. Crap, he thought. My backpack, my wallet. I really, really wanted him to try summoning his backpack and wallet. I wanted to see if that would work, because he thinks about things that he wants and they begin to happen as things go on, you know, like he wishes somebody would stop talking and they do. He wishes that it just makes me wish that he would experiment a little bit more, but he's too afraid of finding out that he could do things. And it's funny because this tale of, like, some kid winds up having magical powers, but he really doesn't want those powers. And it's really frustrating for all of us on the sidelines to be like, why do you not want these powers? Don't you know how awesome this is? Just fucking use them and stop whining about it. That's usually how I feel. And with Jared, I'm definitely like frustrated with him, but I'm not feeling as resentful of it in the way that I have in other stuff, because his life is genuinely such a mess so much of the time that putting magic on top of that is just kind of asking for so much more trouble than he needs. And he can barely cope with the trouble he already had. The difference is, though, in other tales, the encroaching outside magical world is usually another person who's like coming at them for whatever reason, right? The way this story goes, that there are other beings and creatures that are just around that become drawn to him, really changes the circumstances, because while I would be a lot more sympathetic to him just not wanting to be of anything other than human regarding like transforming into another animal, it's obvious that these creatures, these spirits, these beings that are drawn to him aren't going away as much as he might try to deny what he can do. So that's the part that I get the most irritated about, is like, being in denial of just having power is one thing. Being in denial and thinking that's going to fix the other shit that's already started to happen, that's something else, you know? So I have a lot more sympathy for Jared regarding this than I would usually, but it's starting to wear away because he just needs to fucking get on with it at this point, you know? This is just so... It's reached a fever pitch and he needs to fucking man up and deal with it. And the most that he just fixates on like getting his wallet back and stuff, the sort of ordinary things versus everything else that's going on. The one thing that I really appreciated is that he remembers that like David probably has his keys to his house. And again, why would you not tell Maeve that, dude? He doesn't say anything to her about it. He doesn't tell her about this encounter. And he doesn't have to explain to her everything that happened, but he could at least say he snatched my bag and he has keys to the house and get the fucking locks changed at a minimum, you know? But he does not do that. Feathers. So yeah, okay. He's got feathers still sticking out of half his head when he looks in the mirror. Then he's thinking about how how much he enjoyed flying, and immediately feathers start to sprout out of his arms and he has to like sit down and winds up throwing up because he's just so flipped out by the whole thing. He wrapped himself in a towel and peeked out the bathroom door. He heard something screaming and went to check. The murals in the hallway popped to life as he came near them, the little figures dancing and eating, swimming and screaming. Terrible red smoke rose from the painted longhouse on the shore as the painted bear with a seal's tail started snacking on little chiefs in the war canoe. When he walked into his room, the floating heads blinked and yawned. Sarah's firefly shot through the ceiling, forming a tiny figure eight of cold fire above his head. "There aren't enough of us to go home," they told him. "We need your help." "No, I can't." His bedroom filled with ghosts he'd never seen before, and an assortment of new spirits. He didn't know what they were, much less what to call them. They were piled up to the ceiling where Sarah's fireflies spun. The ghostly murmur reverberated through the apartment. The ghosts and spirits stared at him. The fireflies sparked and disappeared, then reappeared. He steeled himself and walked through them to sit on his bed, his skin prickling, chilling. He felt himself getting shaky, anxious. "Go," he told them. "Get, now." The ghosts and spirits all went silent. In the dark corner of the room, something darker tapped the wall. The fingers came through first, pale arms and pale, bald head. Its black eyes scanned the room and it sniffed as it crawled out. All the other spirits puffed out of existence, and the only sound was the television and the thing from the wall crawling towards him. Jared lifted his feet from the floor. So all of this is this is all just reaching a total fever pitch. And he's trying to figure what he should do, because now he's like kind of craving another meeting again. He wants to text Coda and explain, but he can't really like tell him everything, obviously. And let's see. Oh yeah. He tipped the water from the kettle into the bodum, splashing hot water everywhere. The thing slid around like an eel, whipping in ways a human-shaped body shouldn't. He stumbled out of the apartment, no keys, no wallet, headed to the church where he knew an open meeting would be. He was afraid there was no path back to normal. Normal was a line so far away it was a dot in the rearview mirror. He turned his second white chip over in his fingers, sat glumly near the coffee maker. Jared didn't want to go back to the apartment and deal with those ghosts, but he didn't feel like sleeping in the bushes. "You're a trickster," a little voice reminded him. His own voice, no other. I could be, Jared thought, if I wanted it, if I let go. He wanted to finish upgrading, though, and he still wanted a quiet life. Flying was okay, but the rest of it was annoying. So he goes back, and I'm having such a hard time controlling these pages on this Kindle. He'd finally found a place where people liked him, welcomed him, and it was the one place he should avoid if he wanted to stay sane. Which, the warning for him to leave is all well and good, but really, where is he going to go? Finding this place just happened to be one of the saving moments of his life. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because there's all kinds of other shit going on with Nika coming and hanging out with the family and being really weird as she pledges her undying loyalty to Maeve, and the whole family being well, she's fucking intense. But there's this whole other thing with Dent realizing that shit is starting to get a little bit out of hand. And Shu is even kind of drained from doing this intense curse, and they're trying to bring her back by trying to feed her. Eliza tried feeding her every thing you can think of, and none of it worked. And eventually he asks all of the rolling heads, "Do you know how I can help her?" And they stared at Shu, vibrating. She sank slowly into the painted city floor. Dent tried to hold on to her, but she sank down until she was the size of a AA battery. Dent stuck his hand through the floor, then gasped and yanked his hand back as if he'd been stung by a wasp. "This is so much worse than before," Dent said. "The room, you idiot. Do you understand what's happening? Shu's okay. She's in another universe. Relax, she's in the floor." "Which is another universe. You have a pocket universe in your floor. Interdimensionality is not good, Jared. Not good." "Chill, okay? Shu's better." "Oh my God," Dent said. "Jared, universes are separate for a reason. When the boundaries break down, you have chaos." "But she's dead," Jared said. "Aren't ghosts supposed to be interdimensional?" And this is just so funny to me because Jared really is just not fucking here. When somebody tells you you have a pocket dimension in your floor, that all of the different dimensions that are connected here are starting to lose their boundaries. Jared, why are you so lackadaisical about this, dude? It's generally gotten to the point at this point where I'm are you kind of having a mental breakdown and just cannot hear the words that he's saying to you? Is that what's happened? That you've disassociated so hard from this entire situation that you can't even quite make sense of what it is that Dent is saying to you? But this is what starts the whole thing up, because Dent winds up going down there also, and they seem to be having a great time. And she pulled him down, and he squeaked as his head went through the floor. He turned and waved to Jared, excited. Dent tried to yell something at him, but no sound came through. So they spin down, and Jared's watching them, and he starts to kind of he at first tries to leave it alone, but the fact that they don't come out for him is a real problem. And he, let's see, Dent and Shoe banged on the other side of the floor, waving to grab his attention. "Help," Dent mouthed. So this is the part. The little universe below them was crowded with dolphin people. Jared sat on the floor and tried to stick his hand through. He met floor. Solid floor. "Can you help them?" Jared asked. Jared sensed its pleasure that Dent and Shoe were stuck in another dimension. So Jared gets annoyed that this creature is being unhelpful and tells it to take a hike, calls it a creep. And this thing is like, "Oh, really?" And just releases its defenses, because this thing has been keeping all of these other spirits from being able to get through. And basically this thing is just like, if you're going to treat me like shit, then I don't need to do my job. And the ghosts are so fucking packed in here. It's like sardines. They're just like, there's hardly room to breathe. And he's trying to think of who he can call for help, because his mother doesn't trust the dead, and she would get rid of Shoe and Dent in the same way as everything else. And then he thinks of Aunt Georgina. I have to admit, I wasn't worried. I thought Aunt Georgina would exact some sort of payment from him in exchange. But the way this goes down was nothing like what I expected. He says, I'm having a problem, ghost issues. Can you help? And she says that she's going to come by with her grandson, I believe he is, or else he's a nephew. And Aunt Georgina comes by, and the first thing she does is look around and say, my. Cedar comes in, and they both, she unhinges her jaw. Her eyes rolled back as she sucked in a deep breath. The ghosts and spirits bellowed as she swallowed them, inhaling them, and then the hallway was empty. Aunt Georgina's spine straightened, and she pulled herself up, expanding until her head brushed the ceiling. Her large plastic glasses fell from her face, and her human skin burst, her dress shredded, hanging from the thing that had been hiding under her skin. Jared slowly backed down the empty hallway. She touched the walls, and the painted birdmen in the painted landscape beneath the normal beige wall blurred, then flowed in an inky river to her fingers. She cupped the blood-colored flood and drank hungrily. So, at this point, Cedar changes into a wolf and asks, "Are we going to eat Jared?" To which she's like, no, he's family. We're not doing that. They go into the room, and they're about to eat Dent and Shoe. And Jared is like, not them, they're friends. And she seems to respect that. So this, initially, I'm like, wow, she's a crazy monster that eats spirits. This is bad. But then when she sort of pulled back from this and listened to him, I was like, maybe she's just really scary, but she's not terrible. Wrong. Can you get them out and not eat them? Of course, but we're going to join them first, I think. She grabbed Jared's arm and yanked. He screamed, and then the floor was gone, and they were falling through the sky, and Cedar's howls were gone. So, here's the part that sounds like a fucking fever dream. Georgina Thing tucked him in a tree. Below him, dolphin people clicked and squeaked, their language a physical thing moving through them. They backed away from Georgina, creating a wall of gray faces with tiny black eyes. She shredded one of the dolphin people, then reached through its chest and pulled out its heart. She tipped her head back and swallowed it in one gulp like it was a raw oyster, and then licked her fingers. Oh my God. And then dolphin police show up and begin to shoot off their dolphin police guns, which don't do jack shit. Guys, I don't even know. How do dolphin people walk around? What do you mean? Do they just hop? What? On their back fin? Really? What a delightful little world you found. Gran found us a new hunting ground. No gods. We can eat as much as we want. Everyone is coming and we're all going to feast. Come, Georgina thought. Everyone, come now. Jared could hear them all. Excited, curious, hungry. He could sense the ones that were near and the ones that were far away. They all dropped what they were doing to listen to Georgina promising them a banquet, a terrible feast. Want to stay here, Cedar said. Dear heart, Georgina thought, the world is dying. Remember when I told you about the quake and the eclipse, the year with 2 winters, the flood? Your mama's coming. Don't be frightened. We have our key now. The humans will kill their world sooner rather than later, but we'll be long gone. We'll be safe and well fed. We'll feast on this little world beneath our feet, and then the next, and then the next. Yo! So, what winds up happening is, for some reason, she needs Jared in order to keep this open. Now, I'm not totally clear on how this works. And the way that this is not letting me navigate my friggin' pages is making me crazy. I knew one of Weeget's children would be the key, but I never thought it would be you. I don't know what that means and why he's the one that makes this work, but Georgina wants her people to go get Sarah and use her as leverage to keep Jared in line. And when he tries to say, I'm not fighting you, I will let you do this, just don't go after her, she says, yeah, here's the thing though. You don't want to do anything now because you're still not really aware of what you're capable of. Once you start to get an idea of what you can actually do and gain more experience and stuff, you're going to want to fight back because you're going to be capable at that point. And we just can't have that. So he's sitting there and he's thinking about how he wants help. And as he's thinking so hard about this, Georgina stands up and says, that's enough. So it feels like she can sense whatever he's thinking. Everybody has said many times that Jared is like a really strong broadcaster. And I'm curious if that's what's happening here or what triggers that. Calm yourself or we'll make your friends and family suffer. Go get his aunt. Go get his mother. Get his cousins quickly. You'll watch us rip them apart, Jared. No. The thing from the wall slithered through the ceiling and wrapped itself around Jared's feet. Like a snake. Help me. Please help me. The fireflies rose through the floor. They gathered above Jared's head. Jared, stop. Now. Tendrils of light wound down, pausing in front of Jared's eyes. He didn't want to. He really didn't want to, but the wolves would find Sarah. They would bring her here, and he didn't know what would happen then. He didn't know what they would do, and it scared him. He didn't want to go back to the dolphin world and watch the dolphins get slaughtered by coy wolves and the Georgina thing. More fireflies came into the room, and Georgina tried to grab Jared, but she couldn't grasp him as he shredded into wisps, and she roared in frustration. Sarah had been right. Now, what does that mean exactly? Sarah had been right about what? As he joined the fireflies, he disintegrated. Somehow he was still Jared, but he could hear them now, their song like whale song. Jared wanted for them to not bring his family. He wanted Sarah safe. He wanted all of them safe. And then he winds up, he can feel these fireflies ring like a gong, and they sing the word home. And all of a sudden, he is pulling everybody up into this void filled with stars. And they hit the surface of something. I don't know what planet this is. His skin burned in the heat, rocks sizzling like concrete after a summer's day. He sucked in a breath but couldn't get any air. All around him, coy wolves struggled to breathe, stumbled, and fell to the ground, gasping. So he has pulled Georgina plus all of her family into whatever this other dimension is. And they all begin to slowly suffocate and die, except for Georgina, because she is like a demigod and can't die. And apparently neither can Jared. So what she does is first she tries to like break his leg and bait him. Like she's sort of trying to bribe him, and it's just like, I have gold and treasures, like please bring us back. And he's like, not doing it. She grabs him and she snaps his neck so that he dies. Jared hadn't expected to die, but there he was, hovering off the ground near his body. The thing slithered around, unhappy about the cold feet of Jared's body. Georgina was alive, and he hadn't expected that either. He didn't know how she was still breathing when everyone else from their world had choked to death. You killed everyone I love. I'm going to resurrect you now, and then I'm going to kill you again. No, Jared thought, as he felt himself being drawn back into his body. No, no, no. Eventually, Georgina said, you're going to bring me back to our universe, and you're going to watch me kill everyone you love. And that is the end of chapter 39. This is the point, guys, where I'm sitting here like there's literally a chapter left. How the fuck does this resolve? Are you serious? Chapter 40 begins with Jared was dead again. He moved as far away from his body as the ghostly tether would let him. He couldn't feel himself being eaten anymore, but he could hear the joints popping as Georgina ripped off his arm and licked the flesh from his bones, the crack as she snapped his humerus and sucked the marrow. The ape men hadn't been any help. She'd chased them down and eaten a few of them, but she wouldn't let Jared's body go, and he slowed her down, so the rest got away. The fireflies formed a cloud, glowing like northern lights, blocking the stars. Can you help me? Jared asked them. You need to be in your body, the fireflies thought at him. The ogress is demi-mortal like you, so she can't be touching you or she'll hitchhike. We don't want her back in your world with Sarah. So, he's watching her resurrect him and kill him and eat him over and over and over and over again. And he is also aware that despite the fact that she's enraged and doing this to punish him, she is also really, really sad. And all of this magic that she tries to do to bring her family back to life does not work. The ground was littered with beings he'd murdered. Kill or be killed, bucko, his mother used to say. He'd never thought that could be him, that he could be as violent as his mother, but here he was, drifting along the ground, examining his handiwork. Obviously, it was self-defense, but it still felt wrong. The coy wolves hadn't actually done anything. Yet. And now that possibility was over. All their possibilities were over. So she keeps on doing this over and over. There's not really a good estimate of exactly how much time passes here. But then eventually, he starts singing Someday, and she yells at him, no Nickelback, which this author is insane. To bring that up at this point is just such a... What? Oh my God. So he sang this as much as he can remember just to fucking annoy her. She throws his own foot at him. And she mojoed his body back together and shoved him back in it so she could strangle him. Guys, I can't. I'm listening to this at this point, brushing my teeth with my mouth hanging open and my eyes as round as saucers as I stare at myself in the mirror. Like, am I hearing this right? Are we serious? And Jared sang and sang. "You irritating thing," she said, lifting him up and slamming him into the ground. "Now," the firefly said, "go." They sent a single firefly down, and when it touched him, he dissolved into golden threads. He listened to Georgina screaming curses at him. The thing from his bedroom wall spun like a dervish on the ground, furious that he was leaving it behind. Alone, alone, all alone. The world shimmered and was replaced by an empty basement. So he leaves the thing in the wall on that planet. Now, here's my feelings on this. On the one hand, that thing seemed real bad. Very dangerous. On the other hand, it did help Jared out a lot. And I can't help but wonder if this isn't going to come back to haunt him. I feel like this is maybe not the best idea, leaving that thing and Georgina together. What if they can combine and do something and come back? And when he really wakes up, he realizes that he's in the basement where he used to live in the first book, the basement of his childhood home. And there are these movers here, and they like cover him up with moving blankets and stuff, and are kind of like, as much as they're freaked out to find him, they also know that this house has the reputation of being kind of like a flop house for parties and stuff, and so they're not totally surprised. Jared felt fear surging through him, and the fear paralyzed him so he couldn't answer even when the movers asked him how he'd got there, and he couldn't get up. Crap, he thought. End of book. Excuse me? What? Are we serious right now? That's the end of the fucking book? Oh my god. What? No. And what does it mean that he can't get up? Did what Georgina did have like a permanent effect on his body? Like, did he leave his legs behind or something? What the fuck happened? Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't believe it ends here. I'm so mad. What a fucking trip. Like, everything about this it feels so weird and strange, and there's no... Guys, and I finished this, and I went and read some of the stuff that Robin had sent me. Oh, Robin's here in the chat. I'll read your thing in one sec, Robin. But, yeah, like there are a lot of different ogres and things that eat things. A lot of cannibalism, things like that in these stories. So... You know, I was just unprepared for that. Because, like, you know, I think as white people, we romanticize how sort of non-violent we like to imagine Native Americans were, and that their myths and legends were all about nature and animals and things like this. And a lot of it is, sure, but there are still fucking monsters, you know? Like, that shit exists also. And I just wasn't ready for it. I start off this book, it's Trickster, there's a Weegit who can change shape and impregnate women, sure. He's also a raven, sure. All of this feels familiar. This feels Loki-ish, right? This is like... But I kind of expected that to be the worst of it. And then it just keeps turning into a fucking smorgasbord of how many different weird creatures I have never heard of can we fit on one page. And I am totally here for it. Like, completely. I am into it. But I can't believe this is where this book ends. I want to kill somebody. I want to kill you, Robin. I'm mad at you. Oh, well, this works. This is Robin's comment, guys. I am a terrible person for knowingly setting you up for a fever dream Nickelback cliffhanger, but I regret nothing. You son of a bitch. Listening to your reviews has been absolutely fantastic. Just the best. Oh, good. I'm so glad. Publication of The Return of the Trickster was delayed because Eden Robinson has been ill, but the series has been picked up for TV. No shit. So I'm hoping the publisher's plan is for the third book to drop alongside the show next year. Next year, Robin? What? Why would you do this to me? Oh, man. And all I want is for some people I know to read this, and nobody has read it. And when I try and explain... I just sound insane, so I don't feel like I've convinced anybody, and I just... Oh my God, I can't imagine this as a TV series. Like, honestly, this is going to be even more inexplicable on screen. It's going to be I mean, I think it'll be amazing. There's a lot of really cinematic moments in here. But, oh my God, what weirdness. I'm really interested. I wonder who picked it up and, like, because this is the kind of thing I really feel like you'd have to be somebody like HBO to do this justice, you know? Like, you need to be able to swear, you need to be able to show really graphic violence, and you need to have a budget, a real budget. So I hope it's somebody like with the stones for that. And also, yeah, HBO tends to be a lot more daring in terms of like TV shows that might not be super accessible in terms of like making sense immediately to people. They're more willing to like be weird and experimental. Yeah, it's just CBC, so there will be no budget. Oh no. Well, I guess we'll see. Robin. Robin, do you have any theories on why he can't walk? Why he can't get up? Do you think something is wrong with his legs and that his legs got left on this other planet? I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know how this works. I don't know. Oh, man. How does he explain to people what happened to him? Like, his mother is going to know. Well, she won't know, but once he tries to tell her, she's going to be so mad at him. Oh, God. Who does he even call? Can he call Maeve? Can he ask for help from Maeve over something like this that's so, like, inexplicable? I just... Will he tell her everything that's been... I feel like he has to. I don't know. There's so many questions. Well, I'm over time, so I have to go. But Robin, I would like you to know that I'm really mad at you. But also, thank you so much. Because these books were really, really, really fun. And just have gotten me... It's got my brain working and my creative juices flowing, like as a writer as well, because she took this in such weird directions that I would never have thought of. And I'm really delighted to have found this other, like, whole mythology that I know nothing about, but that yet is, like, really close to home, you know? And, I don't know, I really, really enjoyed this. So thank you so, so much. And I know that, you know, commissioning an entire book is not cheap, so I appreciate you doing that because I can't imagine having to wait longer than I did. I'm so glad that these last few episodes were close enough together that I was able to really, like, fly through them. Robin says when the third one drops, I'll be back. Yay! I'll have to reread these beforehand, too, because I know I'm going to forget details and stuff. But that'll be fun. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap this, but thank you all so much for listening. Thank you again so much to Robin. And I will hopefully be seeing you, not soon, but eventually, with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.